Good morning, church. We are going to talk today about the third angel's message. Several months ago, we covered angel number 1 and angel number 2, and we're finally going to get to angel number 3. And the good news is the timing is about perfect. The three angels, although they're very specific in their messages, have behind them or integrated with them an anthem, a theme for each angel. The anthem of the first angel was creation. Fear God and give glory to him who created the heavens and the earth. And all of the other things that go with that, the Sabbath, even the health message, everything ties back to creation. The second angel was about truth. Babylon is fallen. Well, why is it fallen? It's because it's lost the truth. The second angel was all about truth. The third angel is about freedom, about liberty. And since it is the time of year when we focus on religious liberty and things, it's good timing for a sermon about liberty. This last week I was meeting with some pastors from the Ministerial Alliance, and we always do this around the table. What are you preaching about this week? And I said, well, I'm preaching about the third angel's message in Revelation 14. Huh? So I says, well, yeah, remember when you're out at our church, right there on the front of the church, the Revelation. And they're like, oh, yeah, when we met out there, I was trying to remember, what was the text on the front of that church there? And so I said, well, look it up, Revelation 14 here. And so let's read that together. Revelation 14, starting in verse 9 through 11, is the third of the angels here in Revelation 14. 7 angels. We're going to just focus on the third one today. Verse 9 says, Then a third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark on his forehead or in his hand, he himself shall also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of his indignation. He shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment ascends forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. They say, now how in the world do we go from this mark of the beast text to freedom? Well, it's all about choices. This is a very solemn warning. This is about life and death decisions. This is about choice. This is also the last warning. When you continue on into verse 14, the fourth angel comes out of the sanctuary with a sickle, and it's time for the harvest. It's a warning about consequences. It's a warning about choices. It's a warning against tyranny and oppression. The anthem of the third angel is about freedom of choice. Jesus, when he came to this earth, said a lot of things, but one of the pivotal moments, if you will, was when he went to Nazareth and stood up in the synagogue to read, opened the scroll of Isaiah, and read them there from the scroll, the same passage that Pat just read for us here. This is known as the Nazareth Manifesto, where Jesus outlines what his mission was to be here on this earth. And listen for the freedom words as he reads through this passage. Luke chapter 4, starting in verse 16. So he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read. And he was handed the book of the prophet Isaiah. And when he'd opened the book, he found the place where it was written, The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, the recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. The acceptable year of the Lord is a reference to the Jubilee year, which we just talked about in Sabbath school this morning. And what was Jubilee all about? Yeah, setting people free. The debts were forgiven. The slaves were set free, etc. So the verse 20, then he closed the book, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. So going back to Isaiah 61, the wording is a little bit different. You wonder which scribe got the job to transcribe the scroll that ended up at Nazareth, but the wording's quite similar, enough to be consistent with Scripture. It says, because the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound. Still, the anthem, strong anthem, either in Luke 4 or Isaiah 61, is about liberty and about setting people free. In John chapter 8, Jesus is talking to them there, and he makes that famous little one-liner we hear a lot, the truth shall set you free. But in the context of that, in John chapter 8, verse 31, Jesus said to those Jews who believed on him. Now, this isn't just a crowd of priests and Pharisees and scoffers, okay? He's talking to his circles. He says to those Jews who believed him, if you abide in my word, you are my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Now, this rocked their world a little bit because they weren't understanding the implication, again, like we studied in Sabbath school, about being slaves to sin, being caught in sin. So he continues to make the point. Verse 33, they answered him and said, we are Abraham's descendants and have never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you will be made free? So, where do these people live? You know, not in Missouri. No, it's a state of denial. Okay, have they ever been in bondage?
Bondage to the Romans.
They're currently in bondage to the Romans, right? But the whole Passover and everything else was about what big event? Yeah, coming out of bondage in Egypt, right? Yeah, this is part of their culture and heritage and ingrained, and yet somehow with this divine right of destiny or whatever, manifest destiny, whatever nationalism that they had, they'd come to the point of convincing themselves that they weren't in bondage and had never been in bondage. So Jesus goes on, he doesn't stop and argue the point and bring up the history. He goes on to make the point that what we're talking, what the kind of bondage we're talking about here is being a slave to sin. Verse 34, Jesus answered them and says, most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave to sin. And a slave does not abide in the house forever, but a son abides forever. Therefore, if the Son makes you free, you shall be free indeed. Paul makes the same point over in 2 Timothy, writing a letter to his young protege, Timothy, young pastor. Some counsel here, 2 Timothy 2:26. He says that the part of what you're teaching and preaching is so that they may know the truth, and that they may come to their senses and escape the snare of the devil, having been taken captive by him to do his will. So Paul is saying to Timothy kind of what Jesus was saying there through an analogy, is that these people are in bondage and they don't even know they're in bondage. And your role as pastor is to help wake them up, to help them come to their senses, so that they may escape this snare or trap that they're in. Freedom means coming to your senses, to an understanding of the trap you are in, and through Christ being set free. It was Frederick Douglass who said, I didn't know I was a slave until I couldn't do what I wanted to do. Didn't even know didn't know. So what's freedom? How does it fit with this message of basically Babylon? And the reason it fits so well with Babylon is is here in the third angel's message and even in the second angel's message is because they're drunk with the wine. Have you ever known someone to make good decisions when they're drunk? No. When I was a foreman on the railroad, my crew would come up to work every Monday morning, hungover, and it just astonished me to hear this phrase, "I had a great time, I can't remember a thing." How do you know you had a great time? I can't remember a thing. The wine, the deceit that comes, it's this cloak that's clouded their mind. They don't even know they're in bondage. And Jesus has come to set them free. The gospel is about setting people free. So back to the dictionary, let's see what it says about freedom. It says freedom is the power of self-determination. Able to do what you want to do. The ability to access a choice and then to execute that choice. This is the freedom at its basic levels. And the other thing it says there in the dictionary is that there's no antecedent condition. In other words, you can do this, but this has to be, or this. Real freedom doesn't have any previous antecedent. For instance, why did Lucifer sin? But there's no antecedent. There's no previous reason, right? That for him, right? You see, if there was, it would start to become an excuse for sin. I did that because. And then, in fact, I've heard people many times use that phrase, "I didn't have any choice." In other words, I did this because I didn't have any choice. I was forced. Well, that's not freedom. If there's an antecedent to it, then it's not freedom. Usually what people are looking for is an excuse to give you about the choice that they did make. They did have a choice. They chose this way, but now they want to say that they didn't have a choice. Now, it's true that we have genetics, we have circumstances, and that they form and they shape us, okay? But it's important for us to know that we still have a choice. We still have a choice to choose or to not choose, to determine our response to the situation that comes our way, even though that situation we may not have had any say in at all. The power of self-determination. And the other thing that's important is that it should be independent of fate or necessity. And here's interesting, even though that just comes from the dictionary, it really falls in line with the society we live in. On the religious right, if you go way over here where the Calvinists live on the religious right, they will tell you it's fate. You didn't have any choice. You were predestined, so to speak. That on the far religious right, there's no choice. On the far secular left, over there among the evolutionists and the Darwinians, that they will tell you the same thing. You're just a bunch of molecules and hormones, and you really can't help yourself. This has all been determined for you by genetics and everything else. It's both ditches over there have the same excuses for sin. So either end of I call this the Babylonian spectrum. Either end is about no free will. You don't have any choice. Freedom, on the other hand, is all about choice, about not blaming someone else. That blame game that shows up so quick after the forbidden fruit is taken in the garden. And why did you do that? Well, the woman you gave me. Right? There's an excuse there. Why did you do that? Well, the snake you made. There's still just full of these excuses. Freedom needs to be free of an antecedent. There's no No excuse, no previous reason for that. Now, freedom's not just the negative form of it, coming out of bondage, so to speak. Freedom also is free for something. The freedom is in the positive, freedom to be something, freedom to do something. Freedom, in order really to be free, we see this Paul talking about this in 2 Timothy, requires the truth. This is why the third angel's message is dependent on the second angel's message, which was all about truth, and it's dependent on the first angel's message, which is about creation, because if people don't know who they are and where they come from, they have a distorted view of truth, and they'll have a similarly distorted view of freedom. That's why they're numbered 1, 2, 3. They really do come in order. Who you are, who God is, what we are to be and do, the truth and really will make you free. Truth and freedom are kind of two sides of the same coin. You're not going to have one without the other. Galatians chapter 5, verse 1 says, "Stand fast, therefore, in the liberty by which Christ has made us free, and do not be entangled again with a yoke of bondage." Or more modern, the NIV, more modern translations say it this way: "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourself be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." I don't know if you can really just grasp that. Christ has made you free to be free. It's for freedom's sake. He just does not want to see you enslaved. His highest purpose is just to see you be free for freedom's sake. See, and this comes back to God is love. And for love to exist, there must be freedom. You can't force someone to love you. And so the question, one of the big foundational questions of all is, why is there pain in the world when there is a good God? And the answer is, love requires freedom. Freedom involves risk, and risk has responsibility. You can't force love. God could have created beings. And in fact, he may have, that, the one circle the throne and all they do is sing holy, 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 holy forever and ever and ever. Maybe that's just what they do. But real love requires freedom. So if that's true, if love requires freedom, then freedom is as important as love is. I mean, it's no difference to say God is love or to say God is free. It's this. You have to have, for real love to exist, there has to be freedom. It's free for freedom's sake. Christ has set you free. Freedom itself has this intrinsic value to it. It's one of the foundational core principles of who God is. It's just kind of intuitive. We know that if you try and force someone to love you in the physical sense, we call that rape. It's just, it doesn't work. So when the mark of the beast starts to be enforced in the world around us, there will be people who choose the right side of this issue who do not understand the theology and the scriptural argument for it. What they see, though, is an intuitive, basic idea that you can't force love. You can't force worship. And to try and force these things is wrong. And these people will take a stand for the right, even though they don't understand the issues involved in it. But they can just, it's a human intuition to understand that you can't have real love without freedom. If we go back a chapter from our spot here in Revelation, to chapter 13 and look at this enforcement. Listen to these words of force and coercion here. Revelation 13, starting in verse 12. And he, this beast in this image of the beast, exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. 13. He performs great signs, so he even makes fire come down from heaven on the sight of men, and he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image of the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. And he was granted what? Power to give breath to the image of the beast, and that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many who would not worship the image and the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or in their forehead, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. We have a tiny little window of this right now going on with this COVID thing. We have people who are very pro-vaccine standing up as very anti-mandate. Not because they don't believe that the vaccine doesn't work or anything, but because they believe that force isn't the answer. There will be people stand up on the right side when the mark of the beast starts to be enforced who do not understand the Sabbath versus Sunday part of this controversy at all. But they do understand the force aspect of it. And there are also people who, though they don't understand freedom, are taking the side of, again, see, they don't know. So they're taking the side of, it's expedient that one should die so that the whole nation should survive. Because they just don't understand the core issues that are involved in it. So because people don't know who God is, who they are, that's first angel's message, right? Creation. Because they don't know who they are and they don't know who God is, they wander after the beast. A warped concept of God leads to a warped concept of self, and that leads to these kind of actions. Remember what Jesus says when he's hanging on the cross? These Roman soldiers below him there. He says, Father, forgive them. Why? They don't know. They don't know what they're doing. Here's what he's saying. Father, forgive them. They don't know the truth. The implication there is that if they really knew and understand what's involved, they wouldn't be doing this. But they are doing this because they don't know. They don't know the truth. Your decisions are only as good as the information you have. If they knew the truth, they wouldn't be doing this. Now, they may have had opportunity, but they were deceived. But the same problem, though. They don't know. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Who's the easiest person to deceive? Yeah, yourself. Yourself is seriously is the easiest person. The heart is deceitful above all things. Jeremiah 17. I mean, the reasoning sounds so good, right? I mean, it did when they crucified Jesus. It's expedient that one should die so that the whole nation doesn't get involved in this. Rome thinks it's an uprising and comes in and just squashes us. As we look at this third angel message, it's important for us not to focus so much on the beast or the idea that the Pope's a Jesuit or the Illuminati or Bigfoot or whatever. Look at yourself in the light of what Jesus teaches. Pay attention to the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, and the deceitfulness of riches. You are the easiest person for you to deceive. All the reasons why you should be doing this or not doing that. Again, Paul in 2 Timothy says, the whole reason for truth is so that you will come to your senses. You know, Babylon is Babylon because it makes people drunk. It deceives the whole world. And the three angels' messages invite people to come back to their senses and resist the mark. They need to experience the truth in the second angel's message in order to experience the freedom to make this decision under the third angel's message. Continuing on here, talking about this group of people right down there in the toenails of time. Here is the patience of the saints, Revelation 14:12. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. The patience of the saints. You know, look that up in Strong's Concordance, because my Hebrew, and especially my Greek, is not very good. So I rely on my Strong's Concordance. That word there for patience is cheerful endurance. Did you catch the adverb there? Sure. Cheerful endurance, not just endurance, cheerful endurance. These people have uncovered the truth about God, and that led to them understanding the truth about themselves, and they've grown through the stages of faith in their life to reach this point of cheerful endurance. Another attribute of the saints, if you look through Revelation trying to find these attributes, is that they are overcomers. They have overcome how? By the blood of the Lamb. Yeah. It's by Jesus they have overcome the power of sin in their life. See, sin is what we need freedom from. In Revelation 14:4, they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. No decision made without Christ. If he says go left, they go left. If he says keep the commandments, they keep the commandments. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They've been born again. They've been rewired. Okay, they not just medicine to fix the heart, but a heart transplant. This renewed. See, because the default human condition is you are slaves to whom you obey. And if you sin, you're slaves to sin. And the body's broken, but the mind can be rewired. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. That's why Paul there in Romans 7 saying, with the flesh I serve sin, but with my mind I follow Christ. There's a paragraph, C.S. Lewis said this. He said, there are only two kinds of people at the very end. Those who say to God, thy will be done, and those to whom God says, thy will be done. All that are in hell choose it. Without that self-choice, there could be no hell. No soul that seriously and constantly desires joy will ever miss it. Those who seek find, and to those who knock it is opened. See, God respects their freedom. God respects their liberty. God respects their choice. I mean, listen to the language of the freedom words in Revelation 22. The time is at hand. He who is unjust, let him be unjust still. He that is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. He who is holy, let him be holy still. God honors this freedom of choice. It says, behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me. There's a paragraph here from Desire of Ages, a book about the life of Christ. And just there's some profound things in this one paragraph about these principles here. It says, the earth was dark through misapprehension of God. that the gloomy shadows might be lightened, that the world might be brought back to God, Satan's deceptive power was to be broken. This could not be done by force. The exercise of force is contrary to the principles of God's government. He desires only the service of love, and love cannot be commanded. It cannot be won by force or authority. Only by love is love awakened. To know God is to love him. His character must be manifested in contrast to the character of Satan. This work only one being in all the universe could do. Only he who knew the height and depth of the love of God could make it known upon the world's dark night. And the Son of Righteousness must rise with healing in his wings. From the very beginning, page 22 of the book Desire of Ages. See, God is love, and for love to exist, there must be freedom. Love requires freedom. Freedom involves risk. Risk has responsibility. You can't force love. If love requires freedom, then freedom is as important as love is. God is love. God is free. For freedom's sake, Christ has set you free. Would you be free from your burden of sin? Would you be free from your passion and pride? We're going to sing about it in our closing hymn, number 294. Same answer to both questions. The power is in the blood.